Hello, Nathan.
Sean, what's going on, brother? Been a few minutes.
It's been a little bit.
How are you, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm filling in for Gwen tonight and getting you guys up and running tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. I know Gwen is off on a super top secret project at the moment that we can't discuss, but you know what? I'm looking forward to whatever this project may be.
Yeah, I would say so. So, how would you like to introduce your guest tonight?
So tonight, we have an amazing guest. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first contacted him and he said yes, he would come on the show, I honestly was shocked because typically I get ignored, but he didn't ignore me, and it's such a great guy. He's an author, storyteller, a cultural commentator. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. And if you like books, hang on, let me get this ring light out of this damn view here. But if you like books that take fact and twist fact into fiction to make a factual horror story, this is a guy whose books you need to read. I have two of them displayed here, two of my favorite books, and I can tell you straightforward, these are probably the only two books in my paranormal library that I have read more than 3 times. They are amazing. The way he writes is just astounding. But tonight, my guest is Mr. Steven LaChance.
All righty, I'm going to bring Steven on, and I'm going to drop backstage. Holler if you need me, guys.
Yes, sir.
Hey there.
Hey, Steven, how are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting out here in the middle of Mexico in the Caribbean where I live now. So
I'm jealous.
Yeah. It's Playa del Carmen, which is right across the ocean from Cozumel. So
I am jealous. Like, when do I get to go to Mexico?
We've been here now for about 7 years. Actually.
Right.
Actually, almost 7.5.
So do you like it there? Like, is the cultural aspect there different from the U.S.?
Yeah, there was a learning curve at first. It is different in some ways, but where we live in Playa here, it's more like a melting pot of people from around the world. So you adjust, and it's a great place to live. Actually,
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, a lot of good people.
So, to get things started, my typical first question for all of my guests who are not familiar with you or your work as an author or your work on any other shows that you've been on, because I know you've been on a lot of stuff. Who is Steven LaChance when it comes to the paranormal world, as far as your experiences and what prompted you to write the 2 books that are sitting behind me?
Mm-hmm. I can't see it. It's awful small. You got the Uninvited there. What else? The Uninvited, yeah. And what was, you said 2? What was the other one? I'm blind. Bless it. You've got the Union trilogy, the 2 Union books.
Two of my favorite books that I have ever read.
The second book was written for paranormal people more so than any. Yeah, those are what you have there are what got me started in the paranormal. In 2001, I'll just give you a brief synopsis of it. In 2001, I moved into a house in Union, Missouri. And shortly after moving in, things started happening. Things started moving. Kids being scared all the time. I was a single dad at the time. I had 3 kids I was raising. And it was just an absolute nightmare. And then one night, I actually saw it for the first time. I was sitting in the living room, and I looked up, and it came into the family room and stood right in front of me, and then it kind of dissipated away. And we went to the door, and when we got to the door, I closed the door, and the kids were out on the porch, and I heard it screaming from inside the house. So did they. The dogs in the neighborhood started barking, and that was the point that if you want to know what moment drew me into the paranormal, that probably was it. I mean, if you didn't believe up until that moment, you did after that. You know,
I can imagine that would have been terrifying, not only for you, but for your children. Because I know I've seen the Discovery Channel's AHaunting episode. I've read these books multiple times, and let me tell you, like, the stuff that you guys had to endure was absolutely terrifying.
I'm not going to disagree. I was just, through all of it, I was just trying to hold it together. You got to think about it. When something like this happens to you the first time, you have to stop and deal with the fact that everything you thought to be true, everything that you thought wasn't. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like your whole belief system comes crashing down. So you're not only dealing with all of these internal, personal things that you're dealing with as far as what is this? Why do I believe this? What do I think this is? How do I deal with this? What am I going to do? Plus, you have all this other stuff going on at once, too. It was tough. It makes it very tough. So
Hey,
that
Christine,
is
hey,
the
Morgan, I see you guys in the chat. Just sorry, I try to respond to the chat sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Anytime. I didn't know they were there. Hi, everybody.
But yeah, like, let me tell you, when I first saw, and it was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago now, that I saw the original documentary that the Discovery Channel did on the Union Street.
2006 is when that was made, by the way.
Okay, so 2 years after I got into the paranormal.
Right.
But it was probably 6 years after that, maybe 8 years, that I first saw that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I was enthralled. Like, I wasn't enthralled for your experiences, but I was enthralled by the aspect that this could actually happen to a family. Because that, I'll tell you right now, I couldn't have dealt with what you dealt with.
Well, when you're standing in the middle of it, you really don't have much of a choice, do you?
No, you don't.
Think about it. That moment was in that time. Actually, it was quite a bit of time. You just take every day a day at a time, and you try to do the best you can. I think if I hadn't had the kids that I had to constantly wonder if they were okay, and to deal with them, putting them back together, I think it would have been a lot harder. But that thing that is apparent comes out in you, and
Right.
It's a protective instinct, I think, and I think that took over in a lot of it.
That makes sense to me because, I have 3 kids myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. Like, the first time my son called me and said, "Dad, I'm hearing noises in my room." Well, I investigate the paranormal. I've been doing it for almost 18 years. First thing I did was I went up there and I told him, "Buddy, you got nothing to be scared of. Let me do some things, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we'll go from there." But if I remember correctly, just because I'm curious about it, I know Discovery Channel has a habit of embellishing certain things for
Right.
TV. So, am I incorrect in that?
No, I don't think so. Well, you know what's funny about it? I think they embellished some things that I didn't think were as important as others. And there's certain aspects of it that they kind of downplayed from what it really was. I think that was the frustration of it all when the show came out, and probably a good catalyst to why because I had said no to writing the book for a while, and people were pushing me to do it. And I think that was the catalyst for the moment that I decided, well, I'm going to write this, because if anybody's going to tell my story, it's got to be me, And I think what I'm talking about. The whole Bozo the Clown scene in the Discovery show, I think was pretty far out.
I kind of was curious about that myself, because that was a little yeah.
Yeah, do you know he is actually, this is funny, he is actually, in pop culture, he is considered one of the top 10 scary clowns of all time in entertainment.
No shit.
No shit. And I'm like, oh my
Crazy.
God. And I know. When we watched the show the first time and he came on the screen, I looked at my son and I said, "Oh my God, look what you did." He was seeing something. He described it, and I think it's important for people to understand. He described it as what kids will do in a way that it made sense to him. And in his mind, he was afraid of clowns. This thing he was afraid of. Now, I didn't understand it totally until years later. And then I was talking, I think it was John Saffis that said, you know, Steve, a lot of times these things, when they appear to children, the kids mistake them for clowns because they kind of have that look. And I was like, well, that made sense. I think he always knew that I hated the fact that they overdid the clown thing. I really did. It's funny because, you know, they overdid the clown thing, but the actual night that we ran out of the house for good, they downplayed. You know, I did
notice that.
Yeah, I actually carried my daughter out in my arms in shock that night. You know, so I think, you know, it's television though. I mean, anytime you deal with television, you're going to deal with a certain amount of that. You're going to deal with cuts and edits. I mean, that interview I gave for 48 minutes of television was probably 8 hours long, you know. So they take it and they do the best they can. And I'm gonna give it to New Dominion. I think they do a good job of encapsulating the feeling of these things in such a short period of time. I mean, you have 48 minutes to tell a story. How do you do it? And I thought they did pretty good. The thing is this story has so much detail to it that it needed more. It really did.
It did. And let me tell you, because I remember watching that particular documentary, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be thinking of a different episode, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. But was there not a point where you guys were, I don't know if it was the family room or the living room, you guys kind of slept in the same room for a point?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, there was a time, you're right. There was a time when I woke up in the middle of the night and I had all three kids in the same bed with me. And at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? You know, was the move too much? You know, you start psychoanalyzing it a little bit.
Right.
Because, I mean, you know, you were kids that didn't have any contact with their mother at that point. She pretty much deserted us. So it was pretty tough time.
Well, I'm sorry for that.
Those questions were, you know, is this because of that? Is this because of this? You know, is too much normality hitting them hard? I didn't know what it was. And I just knew something was up at that point. I think it was very telling when I looked and they were all there with me, you know, and it disturbed me. I mean, it was disturbing in that fact.
As it should be. I can tell you that if I was in that situation and I had kids, I don't know if I could have handled it in the way that you did. But
I don't know. I think you might have. I think you would have done what you thought was best, and you would have handled it whatever way that is for you. I think, you know, when you describe, you know, talking to your son, I think the first thing that you did with him is what most parents need to do in these situations is say, you're going to be all right. And I think that's important, you know, and I think that's the number one thing. You showed me right there, you probably handled it okay. Because that was the one theme of things that you had to constantly talk about was it's going to be okay.
As a father, you need to stay strong.
Yeah, you have to. You don't have much of a choice.
Even if you're afraid, you have to show that you're not afraid.
Right. It's hard sometimes. It's hard. I mean, when you have the house screaming at you, or in the case of the last night when the house was shaking like an earthquake was going on and the screaming was going on. You know, and you're running out with your child, a scared child in your arms. I mean, it's hard not to show that. I think it's healthy to show a little bit of it because, I mean, it kind of puts into concrete their feelings too. Like it's, you know, this is happening and it's okay because he can show his emotions about this. You know, I think as dads, you know, I think my first mistake with it was my son, just briefly, my son was getting a garden hose out of the basement one day. And I heard him screaming inside, and I ran inside, and he comes running up the basement steps. Now, as a dad, I thought to myself, well, this is the proverbial basement monster talk coming, right? You know, which it was like, you know, there's nothing there, nothing, you know, it was your imagination. Let's go down, let's check it out. I mean, we're talking, this kid was like white, really terrified. And I got him to come to the door and I started to walk down. He wouldn't come down with me. And so I did the whole dad thing, you know, down the stairs, you know, there's
Of
nothing here,
course.
there's nothing there, you know, everything's okay. And I came back up and I told him there's nothing there, everything's all right. And I could tell he wasn't buying it, and that bothered me. But later, it even bothered me more, I think so, because I looked back at it as a guilt. There was some guilt involved there. Because when I did realize there was something going on and there was something happening, I felt guilty because I didn't believe him. You know,
Right.
this you have your own things. All parents do this, by the way. It's not just paranormal. All parents, we make mistakes.
Right.
We mourn our mistakes.
And it's not just that, but if you've never been in a situation where you have experienced a paranormal aspect before this house, of course, you know, you got a separation from the wife, right?
Right.
You're moving the kids into a strange house. Strange houses are going to make strange noises. You know, you can obviously, you have a ground to stand on as far as a logic of it's just the house making noises. There's nothing to worry about. This
is just childhood. This is the proverbial basement monster that doesn't exist. We all go through it, you know. And I think, you know, I can remember being a child. Can you? I mean, going into the basement, and you have to. In ours, when I was a kid, I would go into the basement. You had to turn the light off at the bottom of the stairs. So it was terrifying. So you hit that light and you got up the stairs as fast as you could. So that's how I related to him over it. I'm like, he's just doing what I did. You know?
I cannot think of any child below the age of maybe 12, besides my son, who does not want to go to a basement, because basements are just creepy.
Right.
But I love basements.
We spent a lot. I used to spend a lot of time in basements. It's, you know, what is it about that? I mean, it seemed like every case I've ever went on or had to deal with a family, I was always in a basement. And even when I started doing the Tri-County truck stop out in Union, Villa Ridge, Missouri, I was in the basement there. I'm like, what is it with basements? Every time I turn around, I'm in a freaking basement. You know, and it's like, here I am in the dark with the flashlight in hand, with whatever equipment I need at the moment. I'm sitting in this musty basement, probably breathing in some type of mold I shouldn't be.
Oh, for sure.
Like, yeah, you know, it's like, what am I doing here? You know, you really start evaluating your life choices in that moment, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of have a theory to that when it comes to basements. So most basements, they are not properly insulated as far as the wiring goes. So when someone goes down there, especially if they have to go down there quite often, they're exposed to the EMF fields, which causes electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And it can make you hallucinate, it can make you physically sick, it can cause all kinds of things.
Think back to the Union haunting now.
Yeah, and so if they're not used to that.
What was interesting in the basement in the Union house? Do you remember? There was exposed wiring.
Yep, I remember.
There wasn't a door on the switches, the breakers.
Right.
So I think you're onto something. It sounds, you know.
So when you take an area as small as a basement, right? And you have wiring that's not properly insulated, or say you have a fuse box that's not properly covered, and you take all of that, that's all emitting EMF into that atmosphere. You're creating what's called a fear cage.
Sure.
So when you have that fear cage, it's basically you're submitting yourself to high levels of EMF, even if you don't know it. That can cause hallucinations, that can cause, you know, physical sickness. And some people, it's been known to cause rashes or even physical, like, lesions.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how the EMF can affect the human body. So I think a lot of times the reason that when you go to investigate a case, you go down to the basement, because that's the least insulated spot in the house.
I think that is a really, really good theory. And I could buy into that theory. I'm not one of those that is so solid in this is what happened, you know. I've been trying to find answers since 2001.
Right.
Over 20 years now, and I never found them. I mean, nothing for sure. Nothing I could tell you concrete. This is what it is. I think I ended up with more questions in my search for answers than I did the
We
answers.
we all do.
Mhm. And I think that's important. I mean, especially dealing with the paranormal, is that we realize that, theory is good. Theory is great. And we all can listen to each other's ideas and stuff, and we should. And I wish there was more of that. I really do. But
Same.
also, yeah, it's the thing that I don't like is when somebody begins to talk to me in a manner of that this is what it was, which is not what you did, by the way. I mean, you were very specific and
How do
very
they
well
know?
thought. But you
How
know what
do
I'm
they
talking
know?
about, the so-called expert.
Yeah,
So,
you know what? I hate the term expert when it comes to the
I do.
paranormal.
Yeah.
And the reason I hate that is because we deal in a realm of pseudoscience. Okay? Nothing that we do can be solidified, taken into a scientifically controlled environment with tests and or negatives to run hypothesis to conclude an accurate result repeatedly. So everything that we do is a pseudoscience. There are no experts.
I think what's interesting, with the union case, when you look at it and you look at me and the kids and our views of it, we all view it differently. My son, who's a chemist, he's very scientific, so he comes at it from a very science point of view. There's the scientific absolute comes in, right?
Right.
You look at my daughter; she's very religious based, and so she comes at it from a religious side. And then there's me and my youngest son, kind of in the middle, where we're kind of flying out here, and we're not quite sure which way to go. I think it's probably a lot of everything. Rosemary Ellen Guiley told me once that she goes, what, Stephen, all these things are connected somehow. There's a fine thread that pulls them all together. And she was talking aliens, cryptids, ghosts, demon, jinn, all of it together. And she said there's a fine line that connects them all together. And if we can figure out what that fine line is, we'll figure this out. But of course we hadn't yet. So
That's a good theory.
I thought it was too. And I thought it was probably one of the more interesting things I've heard, because they are connected. I mean, how many times have you heard of a haunting that sounds like an alien abduction? They're very, very similar. They're very similar in a lot of ways, aren't they?
They are.
Spots of missing time, that happens in hauntings. I mean, there was a night in Union where we went to bed at 10 o'clock at night and didn't wake up till 5 o'clock the next day in the evening. All that was missing time. I'm pretty sure you
actually mentioned that in Blessing of the Week.
Absolutely, I did. I felt it was important, and I never figured out what happened. There was somebody that said once, well, maybe you should go under hypnosis, and I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to relive anything like that.
I don't know if I want to know things that I don't know yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I got enough. I got enough. Thanks. I don't need to relive the moments now. It's kind of nice that they're kind of put away.
But yeah, I never actually sat down until you just said it and thought about that, because lost time, similar to alien abductions, is a common thing when it comes to hauntings, and people don't realize that it happens that much. And I've been doing this for 18 years, Stephen, and you just brought something into my mind that clicked the trigger.
Well, see, that's how it works. I mean, that's what conversation's about. That's what we do. But I'm serious, though. If you think about it, go down the list of things, characteristics of a haunting. Take a case. You can take the Union case even and go down it and compare it to an alien abduction case. You're going to have missing time. You're going to have nightmares. You're going to have marks on the bodies. You're going to have just, movement. You're going to have things blowing up in the house electrical wise. There's so much of it that's the same. It's really kind of frightening in some ways. And I think it might be connected. I don't know. There's times I do. I wish I had the answers for you. I don't.
None of us have the answers. If you had the answers right now, I would give you $1 million that I don't have, because that would save me a bunch of time of investigating.
Probably $1 million in equipment too, right?
No. I'm old school. Okay,
Oh, I am too. Good to hear that. I am too.
I don't buy a bunch of equipment. I mean, I have some stuff here, but I don't trust a lot of the equipment. Like, to me, your best equipment is your human body, a notebook, a pen, and a voice recorder. That's really all you need.
Really, and your phone for camera if you need it for some reason.
Well, yeah.
Chances of a ghost coming down and walking down a stairway and posing for you are limited to that. Why is that? Every time you see a ghost photo, it looks like the most pixelated thing you've ever seen in your life. And I'm not criticizing, because I mean, there are a few of the union photos I look at and they're not clear. There's this thing that happens when the photos are taken anyway. Then they aren't really submittable.
My theory on that would be, perhaps if we take ghosts as we understand them, as ethereal beings that put out an EMF field, right? Mm-hmm. Your camera is running off of a battery. And as soon as you power that up, that's putting off a small EMF field. What is the plausibility that those two EMF fields are connecting and interacting, which therefore makes the photo somewhat pixelated or somewhat blurry?
Now, let's do this with video. Think of it this way. Video, I can tell you, I can look at a video and tell by how the camera is reacting to the moment if it's legitimate or not.
Same.
Because you will see it go in and out of focus. You will see some fuzziness. Sometimes you might even see a mistiness to it. But looking at it, and that's what this is, you know what it is, and you're able to pretty quick. And it's interesting.
No, it is interesting. I agree, and I agree with your theory on that 100%, because you're right. When you have that spirit interaction, you can physically notice it on the camera. It will kind of go blurry, and then it will come back clear, and people don't take that into account as much as they should. Just they or I'm going to say novice paranormal investigators, they chalk that up to, it was just dark, so the camera lost focus. Yeah, no, that's not the case. And
I agree. I've seen it quite a bit, though. I mean, it's funny how people will, especially when they're new, it's how they haven't had enough experience to be able to distinguish things. And that's part of it. I think, there's a knowing here. It's like you go online and you go in these groups and they're putting up photos, and at first, I sit back and I look at the responses photos get, and it's like, well, this is so-and-so who died in the 1800s. I'm like, well, how do you know that? Well, I just did. Well, no, you don't. There's no, you can possibly know that for sure. Or it's like, well, that's completely fake. Well, how do you know that? I mean, how can you honestly say to someone that was completely fake? Because the truth of the matter is you weren't there.
Exactly.
And when I look at photos and video evidence and somebody presents it to me, and most of the time, it used to be, not so much anymore because I don't work private cases like that anymore. I'm in Mexico,
I don't know if there's any haunted places in Mexico.
Oh, there's a lot. Believe it or not, there's a lot. The Mayans lived here.
The Mayan ruins.
The Mayans lived here. The Aztecs. There's a lot.
Valid.
But it's like that person that took that photo or video, they're the expert. And there's nothing that you can say, or you can have thoughts about it, and you can say this and that about it, but you better be pretty damn polite about it, because honest to God, you can't tell anybody what that is or isn't. And I get so tired of people attacking others over things that someone's showing you. I mean, somebody will show me 101 orb photos, and I will look at them and I'll say, what do you think it is? And the reason I will do that and I will have them talk to me is because I want to know what they were experiencing in the moment and what they felt it was. I may not agree with it, but it doesn't take or diminish their experience any. And I think that as paranormal researchers and investigators, we have to understand that those people are the experts of the haunting. It's not us, it's them. They are going to tell you what they're experiencing, how they experience it from their point of view. Because trust me when I tell you, from their point of view is much more important than anything you and I can say.
You know what? And I agree with that. I could not have worded that better myself. I'm so glad you're an author and you're good with words, because I could not have worded that better myself. I would have tried, but it wouldn't have worked out very well. But you're 100% right. Like, people take these photos at face value. And then you have these people who come in and they just make off the wall, completely rude comments that are not called for. Did you think about maybe sending a message to the person who posted the photo and be like, hey, curiosity, what was the temperature when the photo was taken? What was the humidity when the photo was taken? What were you feeling when the photo was taken? Because all of that comes into play. You cannot make an assessment specifically based off of what you see at face value in a photo. You have to know the specifics.
I saw a photo recently, and it was somebody had posted one, and they said it was their dead father. And having lost a father, I know how emotional that can be. And what bothered me was, people started in the technical aspects. It's this, it's that, it's pareidolia, it's that. And I'm like, wow. Have we gotten to the point we're so heartless that we've taken people completely out of this equation, that you can't understand that they're looking for someone to say, what do you think? You think that was your dad? And them say, yeah, I think that was my dad. And what's it going to hurt you to look at them and say, okay, good, then it is. If that's what you think, then it is. It doesn't matter what I'm going to tell you. It doesn't matter what all these other people are going to tell you, because quite honestly, they're not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. Or they're
Exactly.
going to convince you out of what you already know.
Exactly.
Somebody that comes with you from a grief point of view, they fully believe it is what it is. And who's to say it's not? I mean, one of the most common occurrences that happen within the paranormal, and people come up and talk to you at different things, book signings and such too, are grandma died and this happened. My husband died and this happened. I lost a child and this happened. It is the most common type paranormal experience there is. How dare us try to lessen that? And how dare us try to make it seem not important, because it's very much a part of their grief. And it's very much a part of them dealing with their grief. And I think it's important. It's important.
So I can tell you, I believe it's absolutely important, because I deal mainly with residential cases. I don't take a lot of public cases. Like, if I'm invited on an event or whatnot, yeah, I'll go into a public case. But typically, I deal with residential. And you have to take that grief aspect into full respect, because you're not dealing with a public place such as Waverly Hills, where you're going to go in, thousands of people have been there. You're going into a location where it's a family that probably no one has ever been to, and no one would even help them if they asked. And you have to take that into account, because as soon as you start dismissing that, then I'm sorry, if you're not adept in what you're doing with dealing with public cases, as far as, families, you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. I think sometimes in our teaching that we get so technical about the technical sides of things, that we do a couple things. One, we forget how to use our own senses, which your own senses are the most important thing.
They are.
And that other thing is the person experiencing it. I think we try to look at things so scientifically and technical that we lose the human aspect of it all. Because I'm going to tell you what, human experience is where those answers are going to lie. Science is going to be able to tell us some things along the line, maybe. But human experience is really where it's going to be at, I think.
It is.
I can't dismiss that.
No, I agree with you, and I can tell you because this is the Paranormal Unveiled podcast, and I have a tendency of making things a little bit tribulatory, if you want to word it that way. I feel like 80% of the people who are in the paranormal right now, they're specifically out there to make a profit. They don't give a damn about what they're doing, the families that they're supposedly helping, or the damage that they leave behind.
The damage they leave behind is exactly it. You know, when we were, you got me talking about it tonight. I told you you'd get me talking about it.
I wasn't expecting this, but Steven, I thank you for it.
When we were living through Union, I couldn't tell you. You know, I was looking for people to come tell me anything you can tell me. I mean, I had people come and tell me, well, it's this person and they did this and this happened to them and I felt this and I felt that. But you know what? You have 100 different people tell you different things, and it's like, my God. And then the other thing is, and you know, and obviously the Catholic Church truly believed it was demonic. I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Who knows if it was? But you know, the church believed it. But you know, the worst thing you can do is the first time you step within someone's house and this kind of stuff going on is look at them and go, "It's a demon." I mean, really. Where in God's name did you get that idea that that would be a good thing to say to someone? You know, it was like that, you know, or they would come in and they would get the evidence, you know. That's why you see union evidence everywhere, by the way, because they come in and they would gather the evidence and then they would go out into the world with it. And you would never see or hear from them again, by the way. You know, it got funny, you know, EVP and that sort of thing. I was getting 100. You know, I was erasing them. I was getting so many, it didn't matter. But because that wasn't my point. Evidence was never my point. I didn't want evidence. I could care less of the evidence I could give you. It's there, but I could care less about it. And the reason I could care less about it is because I just wanted to know what the hell happened and what the hell was happening in those moments. And so it's hard, you know? That was the hard part of it. People look at me sometimes and they think, well, he's got a thick skin where it comes to the paranormal and he kind of backs away from it. It's not that at all. It's just I've been through a lot, you know. And you know, and I learned that it was very hard to trust within it all, you know. And I'm talking people too. It was very hard to trust people. You know, I mean, you're living through the worst moments of your life, and you have people coming in, and they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn about you, what you're going through, why it's happening. You know, you know, they try to convince you of it, but the majority of the time, one, they're going to make it worse, and two, you're never going to hear from them again anyway, or you're going to pull up the internet, and there's going to be evidence of pictures and stuff all over the place, or you know, that sort of thing.
And that's what.
Go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steven. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, and if anyone out there watching this podcast right now is a novice investigator taking on public as far as private homes, right? Like you're going in to help a family. Take exactly what he just said to heart. You're not going in there to gather evidence. You're not going in there to make yourself look better on YouTube. You're going in there to help a family. Evidence, YouTube, views on whatever platform you're on, be damned. Overlook that. Because if you can't do that, then you have no reason stepping foot inside of someone's private residence.
And you never disclose who they are.
Ever.
Never. That is for them to do and not you.
Yeah, I actually, for my team, I actually have an NDA that I have my clients sign.
Absolutely. Because that can do some harm. You know, I mean, especially in small town America. Can you imagine, you know, when the union haunting got out, not because of me or anything, the union haunting got out because of people like that. You know, in a small town, it's hard. It's hard because people think, that you're saying something bad about their hometown. You know, they do. You know, they don't realize that it's this thing that you're going through, even though a lot of them knew it was going on, by the way.
I agree, Morgan. I don't know if you can see that comment or not,
No,
Steven.
I can't. You guys, I'm kind of blind, so.
Yeah, so Morgan said private cases should be kept just that, private. The people
Absolutely.
involved need to be put first above anything else.
Absolutely.
And I agree with that. And that's why I have any investigation I go in, they sign an NDA. And I tell them any of the footage that I capture, any of the evidence that I capture, I don't even care if it's an audio recording, would never be released without their written consent.
You know, there's a video out of the Union case out there somewhere, and I'm not even going to tell you where it is, because
You don't have to.
and at the point where Linda, which you guys know as Helen from the book, she was living there at that point, and it's a video, and it actually comes and looks in the camera, and it looked like a religious figure, sort of, and she refused. And I agreed with her. She's like, we're not really, I don't want anybody to ever see that. And the reason I don't want anybody to ever see that, she goes, is because I don't want people thinking it was holy. And I don't want people to look at it and see, you know, that religion is unholy or spirituality is unholy. But there was a lot of questions around it because it did kind of look like an angry Christ-like figure, kind of, in the video.
Intriguing.
Yeah. And it was never released, and it never will be.
I would never ask to see it.
She passed away, and it's locked in. I know it's locked in a safety box somewhere, and that's where it'll stay. Because no one will ever release that, because it was hers to decide, you know. And
It was.
you know, at that point, you know, we were both going through things, and at that point, I understood her, though. You know, it's like, you don't want people to see any of this. They're not going to see it. We're not going to show it to them, you know?
Right.
And the thing is it's probably one of the better videos of paranormal evidence I've ever seen. And it's just not ever going to go out.
You know what?
You know?
No one else needs to see it. If that was not her wish, then no one else needs to see it.
What was the purpose? What would be the purpose of that? You know, I mean, I've had other things like that through cases through time that I've been shared with. You know, my book that came out last October was one of those cases where.
Yeah, we're going to hit on your other books in just a second, because I just realized, and I did not realize we're already 45 minutes in.
Oh, wow.
That went really quick.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about this stuff. I don't get to talk about it that much. I'm kind of like a team of one. So.
I mean, I love it too, obviously. Hence the reason I do the podcast is I was sitting here thinking all night of, like, what kind of questions am I going to ask him? Like, I'm not going to lie, I kind of fanboyed because I love your work.
Well, I'm glad you love it, but no, I'm very, you know, I even told you that. I'm like, you know, we'll talk paranormal.
Yeah, but
you know, still, I just don't want to relive it to the nth degree, you know.
Yeah, and I would never ask you to do that.
Yeah, you know, and that's, I think people understand, and they shy away now because they think, well, we can't talk about it. No, you can talk about it. I just don't want to relive it. You know, I've done that enough. Sometimes it's better to put things to bed a little bit.
I agree.
But to talk like we're talking tonight, you know, it comes up in examples. You know, I don't mind that at all. I think that is the value of some of the stuff I've been able to do, is to help other people.
I love it.
Investigators. You know.
So since we have about 15 minutes left, because I told you we're going to have an hour, I'm going to hold you to that hour because I don't like keeping my guests any longer than what I have to. So were you into the paranormal before the house, or did you get into it after your experiences?
After the experiences. I mean, that gets asked a lot. You know, it's like, I think I had a curiosity like anybody else would. You know, you think of, I think it was probably more, so long ago, I think it was probably more alien. You know, I wondered, you know, I always thought it was kind of arrogant of us to think that we were the only ones in the universe. But as far as ghosts and stuff go, I didn't I really didn't give it much thought, which was interesting because afterwards, going through everything, I found out that, in fact, when I was younger, that there were some paranormal things that happened around me. And one of my first memories was sitting under a Christmas tree in an old house in the north side of St. Louis, and the Christmas tree, I was alone in the room, and it couldn't have been 3 years old, and the Christmas tree came down on top of me. And I never really connected it, and then I was talking to my mom one day, and John Zaffa said, Steven, he goes, going through what you've been through, the amount of stuff and how severe it was, that you've had to have had something happen to you along the way. It's just one of those things. And I was like, no, I really don't think so. I didn't think of that one event as paranormal. And then I was talking to my mom, and she said, well, when you were younger, when you were a baby, I used to hear footsteps up and down the steps, and I would find you tucked in.
Oh.
And I was like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, right?
Right? I'm like, I was. He was right. Obviously, I told him right away. I'm like, and I never liked telling Donnie he's right.
You know what?
I loved him to death. He knows that. But
I am finally going to have the honor.
I got to tell him he was right again.
I'm finally going to have the honor of meeting John at the Connecticut Paracon next month. And
you'll love it.
I've been looking forward
tell him
to
I
this.
said hi. Tell him Tiny said hi.
I will. And I have been looking forward to this for so long because next to Hans Halser, who has passed, he is probably my favorite person when it comes to the paranormal.
He got me through a lot. I can't tell you how much he got me through. And I'll always be grateful to him for that.
So I know you, after your experiences, you kind of delved into the paranormal a little bit here and there. You looked into things. Did your children, after the Screaming House, can I ask that, or is that too personal?
The youngest. He's like me in that sense. That I keep the house pretty much sage. I bless the house quite a bit. There's movement. There's lights that come on occasionally, but it's just little stuff. But he gets that too.
Okay.
And so my grandson, when he's 5 now. I guess he was about 3, 4. They walked into a room and he was talking to his grandmother who had passed away before he was born. And this has happened a couple of times. I mean, so I think there's a genetic component. I can't explain it to you. I don't know why. But yeah, it's there. The other two, I would let them speak for themselves on that.
Fair enough.
I think so. Yeah, especially the scientist. He would kill me.
Nope. That's why I said if it was okay to ask. That's a fair enough answer.
I think what would be the interesting documentary is to get all 4 of us and interview our experiences separately, because the fascinating part of it would be how different the 4 of us are.
I would absolutely love to see it.
Try to get that done. We were working on getting that done, and the funding fell out from underneath it. But I've always thought of going back into that, and it's like, that's the fascinating part, because it really is encapsulates the idea that we all don't experience things in the same way. We all don't perceive things in the same way. We all have our own personal things that mold our experience.
Right.
The one thing we can agree on is we all went through something, but all of us have different ideas of what that something might have been.
Yeah, because realistically, and this is very common with hauntings, okay? And you know this, but people watching the podcast may not know this. One person can experience one thing, and someone standing right next to them could experience something completely different.
That's interesting you say that, because I can give you an example of that. One of the last nights in the house when it started screaming. My daughter was in a back bedroom when it started to scream. I heard a man screaming. It was a male voice, which I had heard the time before. What she tells later was she heard multiple voices screaming. We heard two different things. And I think that happens a lot. I think it happens a lot within the thing. So I was always for me, it was always important that I never kind of pushed them in a viewpoint. I thought it was important that they be able to express themselves in what their experience is without influence.
Agreed.
I think, I think that was the most important thing I could do, or I could give them from it all, was to let them at least use their intelligence enough to decide for themselves. They didn't need to be told. I wanted them to decide. It's just like, when the church report came out. I mean, the Catholic Church report was 156 pages long. And
Wow.
it said that the Union haunting was a demonic infestation, obsession, oppression, and possession. Well, after I read that, I called my mom. I said, my God, I just got done reading this report from the church. I can't believe first of all, they did the report, and my God, it's terrifying. I was reading this about me, and they said this, and they said that. And she said the most wise thing she has a way of doing, and had a way of doing. And it was, that's one point of view. That is only one point of view coming from one point of view. What's your point of view on that? And I think that's the way I dealt with the kids too. It was, it wasn't me saying it's this, this, and this like the church did. It's what do you think it was? What was your point of view? And I value what they think, because the truth is, well, who's to say their answers aren't any better than mine, right?
You know what? Kids are more susceptible than adults.
Right. Absolutely.
I absolutely love that standpoint. But Steven, I see we got about 7 minutes left. So tell everyone, where can they find your books? Like, where can they buy your books? And if anyone out there watching this podcast wants to buy Steven's work, I would highly recommend The Uninvited and Blessed Are the Wicked. They are two of my favorite books.
Start there.
In my library.
I reissued the Blessed Are the Wicked again in a special edition, and somebody gave it 1 star on Amazon.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I need to get it.
I mean, this is a book that was out for years and had 4+ stars, and then one person comes along. But you can get any bookstore. You can find any of my works in any bookstore. And it's, if they don't have it on the shelves, you can order it. A lot of them are in libraries too. I mean, gosh, the Uninvited and crazy. They're in the National Library.
Can I tell you a funny story about The Uninvited?
Yeah, sure.
I had this book?
Sure.
I went to the bookstore, and I obviously, if I go to a bookstore, I'm going to be looking for paranormal books because that's what I do. And I don't read anything else other than paranormal nonfiction. I go back and I see this book, and on the spine I see LaChance. And I'm like, that can't be the Discovery Channel episode guy. That was my original thought. And I picked it up, and I was like, holy shit, it is. I have to have this.
I appreciate that. I still am humbled by that book. That book is considered a classic now. I wrote a classic. Can you believe that? My first book is considered a classic of true horror.
It's fucking great. Excuse my F-bomb, but it's fucking great. It's a great read.
It was my heart went into that book. You read what is in here. It was me dealing with those things too, by the way. It was cleansing. But I'm blown away by it. I really am, because I remember right before it was released, one of my sons looked at me and he goes, "Who's going to want to read about your life, our life?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "But obviously someone is, because they gave me a publishing deal on it, so we'll see what happens." But I remember the night before it was released, just that going through my mind, I was terrified. I'm like, who in the world is going to want to read this thing? You know, why would they want to read this? And you know, and funny, I woke up the next day after the release, and my inbox was just full, and it didn't stop. I still hear from people, you know, that are reading it
No,
for the first time. You know, it's
the only
all from
thing I
around
wish
the world. Hmm?
the only thing I wish I had was your autograph on the inside of the books.
Someday maybe we'll be able to do that, but it's really hard when I'm traveling the world and living.
Oh, I know. But
if you can catch me, I'm headed to Japan and Taipei in October.
well, I ain't going to fucking Japan, brother. But no, like this, like I walked in and I saw that book. I'm like, there's no way it's the same guy from the Union Screaming House. And then I pulled it out and I'm like, holy shit, it says Union Screaming House right on the cover. I'm like, I'm buying this book. Bar none, this book is not going back. I don't care about my budget. And then I found out there was a sequel because I bought the book like 4 years after it came out. And I'm like, what do you mean there's a sequel?
Yeah.
And then like I said.
Well, you know, it's like The Uninvited was from a certain period of time, but there was still stuff happening even after the book came out. And it was like, I thought it would be important in being a researcher and an investigator who helps people that I would write something that would be kind of more to that sort of thing.
It is important.
That would describe the aftershocks of it all. By the way, the book was supposed to be called Aftershocks, and that was way before the Ghost Adventures Aftershock thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they talked me into Blessed Are the Wicked, which I kind of like now anyway.
No, I love the title.
Yeah.
I love the title.
There's a reason for that if you have never read the book, I can't tell you why it's there. Because
I have written a book, it's just not published yet. So.
Well, you need to get it out there. The more voices we get out there talking and telling our experiences, the better.
I could tell you that I'm trying, but publishers have an issue with my topic. So it's a little bit of a in the works thing. I'm trying to figure out.
Well, you know what I do when they have a problem with my topic, I self-publish it.
That's exactly what I'm looking into doing.
You know, I do. It's like, you know, I don't do this because I want to.
So I'm not going to hold you too much over though, but I see we're at 59 minutes.
All right.
Can we talk about your other works? Like besides these and the Union Screaming House, like what other works do you have that people can find?
One of my favorite is Crazy, which is about Crazy, A Prayer for the Dead, which is about the Tri-County truck stop in Villa Ridge, Missouri, a haunted truck stop. It's based on a lot of things. It's based on an actual investigation. It's based on urban legend. It's really the stories that are woven in the book are the stories and the urban legends that the townspeople would come and tell me as I was gassing up the car. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's actually, that book was written for them. It's my ode to my home. You know, then there's Confrontation with Evil, which is the story of the exorcist, the St. Louis exorcist, from a point of view that is more realistic than I think was ever written. At least that's the way it's said. And, you know, that was the reason that I was included in Discovery Plus and Max's Exorcism of Roland Doe.
Of Roland Doe, yeah.
Yeah, but that book, the research was crazy in that book. And then I'm doing something different right now, and they're mainly fiction. It's the Modern Monster series. I wrote Glow, and Gorilla comes out July 1st, which I can't wait. But they're based on factual things, and then I tell a story with it, you know, to describe what things are, how they work, and how life is. Monsters come in a lot of different packages. You know, Frankenstein is not necessarily the Frankenstein from Universal from when we were kids. Frankenstein can be something very different in this day and age. And I thought that was interesting. And Glow is about nightmares and sleep paralysis. And it's actually based on some cases. And each of the books, I start out with an introduction that explains exactly where the research is coming from, what this is based on, what I know, and why I'm writing this book. And then we go into a narrative after that.
Well, I can tell you that
Good.
that one I'll be very interested in from someone who has experienced sleep paralysis multiple times.
This book will mess with you because I'm going to
It
tell
is.
you, the descriptions of sleep paralysis and the things and the nightmares that happened in that book I took from actual cases.
It is
Well,
not. It is not something that is for the faint of heart. It's not fun.
it was an easier way to do the book without telling somebody's story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It
I
was
get exactly what
an
you're saying.
easier way without stepping on that the patient client or whatever you want to call it kind of
Yep.
thing.
Patient client confidentiality, if
Right.
that's how you want to word it.
Now, Gorilla is based on a lot of things. Gorilla is based on MK Ultra, the mind and control experiments, the use of LSD and hallucinogens and the effects it have on people. It's a thriller as much as it is a paranormal supernatural book.
So what you're saying is I got to open up my wallet and buy a few books because both
Yeah.
of them sound
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is I started writing. The last book of the series will be Grace, and I started writing that was based on a play I wrote in 1992 that talked about the evil in the world, and I had no idea. It was after the Rodney King verdict and the Rodney King riots and everything that I was examining evil in the world, and I wrote a play because a lot of people don't know I was a writer before the paranormal. Actually, I've always been a writer. I was actually more of a journalist type thing and a broadcaster.
I can tell you from the way that you write, I always knew you had a way with words because these two books are encapsulating, and that's the only two books I have by you. But trust me, I will be getting more.
I want you to read Crazy then. I want you to read Crazy because that is my. I tell you what, the three books I got, Crazy, Glow, and Gorilla as of right now are my three favorites. I mean, Crazy, it's emotional, man. You got to read Crazy.
I will.
You want to know about the nature of evil and the things we do to each other and how it affects us in the afterlife and how hell is other people, then you want to read Crazy.
And I can find that on Amazon, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You can find any of the books, Amazon, any major bookstore that sells books or download. If it's not there on the shelf, you can order it. If you want digital downloads, they're there in digital that you can get right away on your iPads or whatever.
Awesome. So if people want to find you, where can they find you as far as social media? If they want to follow you, not necessarily send you a friend request because some people out there are creepy. Where can people find you as far as like following your work and just finding you and what you do?
I'm pretty accessible though, but it's StevenLaChance.com is my website. You can check out any of the shows. Haunting, I did 2 different episodes of Haunting.
I recommend both.
You can see me on Max in The Exorcism of Roland Doe. There's a whole lot of films I did in an earlier time on Zombie Road and that sort of thing.
I forgot about the Zombie Road thing.
Yeah. Well, see, there's a lot to talk about, right? We could have talked about.
We have so much more to talk about. I completely forgot about that.
We'll do another show. I promise you, I'll do another show with you. I don't do a lot of it. I do. I promise. You said to me, you came at me, and I couldn't tell you no. And it's like I don't do a lot of them because I know
you don't.
I just don't. It's just I don't. I like my books. I think the books kind of stand on their own. I think the shows and the books and everything and things that I have coming that I can't even talk about kind of do the job of it all now. You can go to YouTube and you can watch. You pull up my name on YouTube. There's hours and hours of interviews like this and interviews of recent and that I've done just because I'll do something when people start asking a lot. I'll just sit down in front of the camera and do something. But there's all of this stuff out there, and so I don't do as many of these anymore.
Yeah, and I'm like I said, I completely forgot about the Zombie Road in Missouri. I completely forgot until you brought it up.
That was one of my things. I brought Zombie Road to life, I'm afraid. And
But
so,
it's
you know, I
so
really thought, real quick, I thought when we went into Zombie Road the first night to investigate it, I thought it was going to be a walk through Who's 100 Acre Wood. I really did. And boy, was I wrong.
and it's such
Boy,
a
was I wrong.
fascinating story.
The photo, now you want to talk about a photo that came
Oh,
out.
the photo.
The photo of Tom, who's passed now, but his
Creepy.
photo, yeah, I've actually, you know, if you watch, was it Children of the Grave, you'll see the movie
Yes.
about it, and you'll actually see video, and I was there when the video was taken, so I get to talk about this video, and you'll actually see the shadow stepping out from behind the trees in the middle of the night, and it's crazy. I mean, that was a crazy night, but yeah.
One of
Yeah, there's a lot to
one of-
talk about, bud.
I actually added that to my bucket list after I saw Children of the Grave. So you have a spot that I've listed on my bucket list because of a show that you were involved in.
Well, I'm
So
glad.
I typically end my podcast with a multi-part question that I ask every single guest that comes on.
Okay, I gotta take a drink. What is it?
You're good. So if you had one place, if you were still actively investigating in the paranormal, that you could go to, that would be your bucket list, what location would it be?
Well, I've done a lot of them. You know that, right?
Yeah.
In Egypt, I've done the pyramids. I've done Berlin. I've done Vienna. I've done Japan.
Choose a place you've not done.
Jerusalem. But you know, when it comes down to it, there's one place that I still haven't done that I want to. It's Dracula's castle in Romania.
Oh, yes.
That the I'm a believer of people in your personal belief give places power, and that's one of those places. Yeah.
So can I tell you, I have a personal friend of mine that does Dracula tours.
Wow.
I might be able to hook you up and see if we can work something out.
Well, let me know. Let me know, because I would be there in a heartbeat. And
Yeah, I might be able to work something out and hook you up because he does Dracula tours once a year, and they go to the actual castle. You get to walk through overnight and all that. Because let me see what I can work out for you.
Well, you tell him I have to plan it, and I'll plan ahead, because you know.
Oh, he does it every year. So
Because I'm always doing, you know, I'm always headed something, you know. I'm always.
oh yeah, okay. So we got your location. We got Dracula's castle.
Right.
If you could bring anybody, they don't have to be involved in the paranormal. It could just be someone that you respect and you want with you to bring on that particular investigation. Who are you bringing?
That's a hard one. Well, I bring my husband Rick for sure. Probably. Without question. I mean, he goes wherever I go, so I guess it doesn't count, right?
That's fair enough. So we got Dracula's castle. We got your husband Rick. Last question. You have one piece of equipment that you can bring with you, and that's it. That's all you can bring is one piece. Doesn't matter if it's a notebook, voice recorder, whatever it is. What piece of equipment are you bringing with you, and why?
A recorder. There's a couple reasons. I'd like to be able to take notes that I can talk into the recorder and give notes to. And I'd also like to do EVP. A lot of people don't realize that I was really, really well known for EVP in the beginning. So EVP was my thing. And it still is, I guess, in some ways.
It's mine as well. I'm currently developing an application that can take EVP and break it down to the human vocal range.
Do you know who really helped me in the beginning with EVP? And I don't know if you know, have you ever heard of Todd Bates?
I have not heard that name.
Well, you need to look Todd up. Todd helped me tremendously with some of the first union audio that came out. And that audio is still out there somewhere. I mean, you can hear it. But he tremendously helped my road to EVP. And then, you know, you kind of take that from, yeah. Maybe him. I mean, maybe Rick and him I take with us.
No, I love that, and I appreciate the shout out, and I appreciate, pushing me in a direction that I can reach out to someone who may know a little bit more than I do.
Well, he's tremendous, actually. He's a good guy.
That's awesome. Steven, but I thank you so much for taking a little bit over an hour of your time to come and speak with me. I think this was a very eye-opening show. I think we had a great conversation. If you wouldn't mind just hanging in the background for, a few minutes, because I want to ask you a few questions afterwards. But everyone, this was the Paranormal Unveiled with author and storyteller Steven LaChance. I surely hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.
It was definitely a great show. I'm going to set Steve in the back for you.
Yes, sir.
That was a great show, Nate. Keep up the great work, man.
I feel like it went really well. I feel like we had a good flow. And typically I write down questions. Tonight, I didn't even feel the need to. Like, I wanted to. And I sat down and started writing questions. And I'm like, what am I writing questions for? Because I already know what I'm going to ask the guy. Like, I know what I want to ask.
Yeah, most definitely. You're always great at asking questions and getting down to the bottom of things for sure. And you always have a great show, my friend.
Well, I appreciate the compliment.
I'm going to run a couple commercials here real quick before we shut down and then say goodbye, guys.
Yep. As I said, I'd like to have, Steven over for a few minutes just so I can ask him a few other questions after the cast.
Yep, no problem. Here we go. Here's going to be the last few commercials we'll run. I got 3 to run here.
11 a.m. to 7 p.m., the Deep South Para-Comic-Con will bring chills, thrills, and much more. Special appearances by the paranormal rocker Keith Age, Blaine Rohan psychic medium, Dr. Lee Triana Brown, Professor Matthew Brown, Lilia Bogoeva, Michael and Destiny Fox from Fox Paranormal, creator of American Demon comic Austin Light, producer Gwen Johns, Ben Bracken with Dothan Ghostbusters, Ken Gerhard from Monster Quest and Ancient Aliens, WCW Wrestling NWO Wrestling American Giant Buck Bresner, CCW Wrestling The Masked Assassin Russ Conway, James Stokes from Stranger Things, Voorhees Night of the Beast and many more, Ethereal Voice Paranormal Richard and Colleen Johnson, Jessica Lentz cosplay artist. Come see Litriana Brown's Haunted Object Lab. What do you feel from these objects?
Charges, you guys run, I'll hold it back, I'll shoot at it, hold it back until I'm scared. But if this thing charges, I can defend myself, you got it. This was very late at night, everybody was asleep. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified.
And Nate, this is one we'll both be at, the Paranormal Rockdown.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great event. I was trying to point it out, but then I realized my camera was reversed. So I'm just over here doing some weird, like I walk like an Egyptian movements. Yeah, so it is what it is. But I feel like it was a great show. I think the conversation flowed well.
Yep. And like I said, here's the last commercial, the Paranormal Rockdown.
Join us for the Paranormal Rockdown. We kick off the event Friday, July 18th from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Main Street Music in Brooklyn, Wisconsin, where we feature bands Left on Red, Switchblade Saturdays, Etched in Embers, Fiction We Create, January, Again We Rise, and our headliner Green Jelly. Saturday, July 19th, starting at 11 a.m. at Broadhead Manor in Broadhead, Wisconsin, we have our Paracon featuring Dave Schrader, Sam Beltrusis, Scotty Rourke, Dustin Perry via Zoom, Sarah Lamos, Nick Simons, Kenneth Drake, Stream Beacon TV, Dark Realm TV, and over 30 more great guests you won't want to miss. We have over 40 vendors, speakers, workshops, gallery readings, and so much more. A special thank you goes out to each of our sponsors. Get your tickets before they sell out at paranormalrockdown.com, and we hope to see you at the Paranormal Rockdown.
There we go. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night. I thank you all for tuning in.
Bye, guys.